Hey Fromily, it's Julie B. Deep Dives, and today I'm diving into part 2 of my breakdown of the mind-blowing finale of From Season 3. As a reminder, the showrunners promised us that this season, the true nature of the town would start to come into focus, and that we'd get some answers finally, but also more questions. And they delivered on those promises in epic fashion by the end, in the second episode of a two-parter fittingly titled Revelations. This is not a recap. I'll break down my biggest takeaways and theories with predictions for the future of these characters and the show. Because like I've said before, this finale is going to change everything. We had Tabitha and Jade experience an epiphany revealing their true origins as reincarnated people. Randall and Marielle continue to suffer the effects of the cicada coma. And Jim meets a shocking demise when he finds he is at the wrong place at the wrong time, as is Julie, in more ways than one, which I'll get into much later. Most interesting of all is the appearance of a brand new character, the enigmatic man in yellow and his ominous statement, "Knowledge comes at a cost," a theme that rings true throughout the episode, as I discussed in part 1 of this deep dive of the finale. So without further ado, let's get into part 2 of this deep dive into the finale of From Season 3. Kicking off the episode, Tabitha tells Jim about her experience in the root cellar with Victor and says she felt like Miranda was there and trying to tell her something, but it didn't feel like just a vision. Continuing his character growth arc, Jim seeks out Jade's help and swallows his pride, apologizing for his behavior, admitting he's scared and that things are happening to my family that I don't know how to protect them from, but the truth is I think you might. This is huge growth for Jim, and it's more foreshadowing to add to the episode 9 foreshadowing of Jim's death that I pointed out in my previous video for episode 9. Jade will indeed, in my opinion, become the protector of Jim's family when Jim isn't there anymore, and he'll probably be a lot more effective at it too, just like Jim is saying. Jade confirms that when Tabitha is describing her visions, it sounds different from what he's experienced. He says, "It's always like I'm seeing something that shouldn't be there. That day I saw the Civil War soldier. It's not like I was back in the Civil War. However, I still think that the men in his visions are past lives of his, even though he doesn't feel that way in this scene." Jade explains to Jim and Tabitha that according to the law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only change from one form to another. So he thinks that maybe Miranda's energy has lingered here, and the Ankui child who led her to the root cellar must have wanted her to see what she saw while in there. They all go out to the peach truck where Tabitha had seen this Ankui child beckon to her, and Jade points out that the only point of overlap in their, quote, vast Venn diagram of crazy, unquote, between himself, Tabitha, and Miranda is the children. Jade relates his vision of the children on the stones with the symbol in the roots up above. And then Tabitha shares her newfound knowledge, given to her by Victor, of the children on the slabs pouring their hope into the roots, which made the tree. And then Jade realizes that that's what created the faraway bottle tree. He vents his frustration that his visions have been so vague instead of just telling him what's going on. And he effectively serves as a mouthpiece for us as the audience in this moment, frustrated with the ambiguity of this show. Inside the peach truck, they discuss the bottle tree numbers. Frustratingly, even though Jade looks at the map on the wall that fans have been dying for characters to investigate since season 2, no one says anything about the map, and it feels like the writers are deliberately trolling us here with this. Anyway, Jim expresses skepticism that the bottle tree numbers mean anything, but Tabitha says that Miranda knew those bottles were important, or she wouldn't have a replica in her yard. Jade says he's considered every angle he could think of on what the numbers mean, but Jim points out something he hadn't thought of, that there are 12 numbers, including backwards 2s and 7s, and they could translate to music. As Jim points out, since his mother was a piano teacher, that music is the universal language. With Jim having cracked the code, Jade starts to decipher the numbers and hums the tune. And once he starts, the rest of the song comes to him without having to look at any more slips of paper. Jim is suspicious of the way the tune magically pops into Jade's head and says this place is trying to manipulate and hurt them, which he's right about. And being uncharacteristically naive, Jade asks how playing a song is going to hurt them. Jim rightly points to the haunted music box that almost killed everyone in Season 2, and the haunted jukeboxes in the diner. So Tabitha suggests they play the song near the tree where the papers came from, and not in town, just in case. Against his better judgment, Jim plays along. Once they're all at the tree, Jade plays the song on the violin, and it seems to summon the Ankui children to them, who only Jade and Tabitha are able to see. A little girl approaches Tabitha, kneels before her, and says the word Ankui, but in a different way, sweetly, with a smile on her face. There's nothing creepy about it this time. Combined with the song Jade's playing, it seems like it's now a magic word that triggers the rest of Tabitha's memories to return. Tabitha and Jade experience a simultaneous epiphany come over them. They realize the enigmatic word means remember. Fans of the show have done extensive research to try to decipher the meaning of that word, but it turns out that it was just a gibberish word that the writers made up to mean remember, apparently. Visibly emotional, Jade says they tried to save the children and they used to sing them lullabies, as Tabitha takes off in a panic. Then Jim follows her, and we get the big reveal. Tabitha tells Jim that she and Jade have been there before, that she was Miranda and he was Christopher. They were there at the beginning, and they've been reincarnated many times since. They were there when the child sacrifice happened, because they failed to save the children. Confirming the reincarnation theory that I have been working on since episode 3 of this season, when Tabitha found the bracelet in Henry's glove compartment, which I first brought up in my Tabitha and the Mirror World video. Other creators and fans have also come to this conclusion independently, just like I did. I later theorized in my video on the origins of Jade and Tabitha that both of them had been reincarnated and were part of the original town that sacrificed the children. I said that this is how Tabitha was able to make the same bracelet as Miranda, and Tabitha confirms this now in the finale. She says she kept making them because somewhere deep down she remembers. Also in that video, The Origins of Jade and Tabitha, I discussed my theory that all of the men in Jade's visions were his past lives, all from different eras: the Puritan man, the Civil War soldier, the man under the boulder, and Christopher. This is similar to Miranda's experience. She saw all the chosen ones before her, which I explained that I believe were her past lives and how they failed, and she painted everything she saw. It's just that Jade's visions are more confusing because, as far as we know, he didn't drop acid like Miranda did. He used different types of drugs. I still believe in this part of my theory, even though Jade said in the finale that his visions felt different from Tabitha's, that he didn't feel like he was back in the Civil War when he saw the soldier. I just think that he doesn't have as strong of a connection to what he's seeing as Miranda, because he didn't drop acid, as far as we know. And it's not as strong as Tabitha's connection, because Christopher doesn't have any family around for Jade to connect with and jog his memory, as Tabitha was able to connect with Henry and Victor, like this moment when she hugged Victor and had that rush of memories from Miranda come over her. I also still believe that Tabitha was the one who read the children a story that gave them hope when she was unable to stop the sacrifice in the origin story of Fromville. The one thing that I think I got obviously wrong in my theory is that Jade was the ringleader of the child sacrifice and may need to sacrifice himself to break the cycle. I'm glad that I'm apparently wrong about that, as he is my favorite character. Now there seems to be hope that he can make it out of this alive. But getting back to this revelation, we get even more of the bombshell theory, the bombshell story, that Tabitha and Jade tried to save the children, and one of them, that little Ankui girl who came up to Tabitha, was their daughter. I'm actually glad that part of my theory was wrong, and the original Jade was not responsible for the child sacrifice once again. So hopefully, he won't have to sacrifice his life to break the cycle. Tabitha points out that this explains why there's more than one bracelet. She kept making them because somewhere, deep down, she remembers. And now this is where the revelations give way to huge questions to close out the finale. Tabitha takes off by herself, and Jim goes over to the RV to collect himself, understandably upset. He has a flashback to their arrival in town when he said, "Sometimes I remember when it wasn't like this, when it was like before." That final flashback makes it even more obvious that he's about to die, as I had predicted in my video for episode 9. In a mind-bending twist, then, a future version of Julie comes running and pleads with Jim to run, saying, "You need to get to town right now. It's not safe. I think this is when it happens. I need to change the story." She's got a shorter hairstyle and scratches on her face, clearly not our present Julie. And then the mysterious man in yellow from Miranda's painting strolls over, saying, "That was a hell of a song. That Jade sure can play." The man in yellow goes on to say, "This didn't have to happen, you know. Knowledge comes with a cost. I did try to warn you." Jim shoves future Julie away instead of running with her as she pleaded with him to do, grabs a big stick, they struggle, and the man in yellow grabs Jim by the neck. Slamming him against the RV, the man in yellow tauntingly says, "Your wife shouldn't have dug that hole, Jim." Of course, this is a reference back to what the voice on the radio said to Jim in the season 1 finale cliffhanger. And shockingly, he rips open Jim's throat with his bare hands while future Julie screams in horror, and we fade to black. Now first, let's unpack what the man in yellow said. He referenced Jade's song. Does this mean that the song itself summoned him alone? I don't think so. He also said knowledge comes with a cost. The music summoned the Ankui children, and the combination of that music plus the entrance of Jade and Tabitha's daughter, that unlocked Jade and Tabitha's memories of their past lives, bringing them knowledge. And that knowledge is what comes at a cost, though. That revelation of Tabitha and Jade is what summoned the man in yellow. I think it's because he doesn't want them to get closer to the truth. Finding out their true origins could be helpful in figuring out what mission they actually need to complete to finally save the children and break the cycle. Now, the trauma of Jim's death, though, will be a huge distraction for Tabitha and an obstacle in her journey. It's unclear who left these numbers in the bottle trees for them to find, or if it was just part of the game and maybe they were manifested there. Because it's hard to imagine that Miranda and Christopher, or maybe past incarnations of them, put those slips of paper in the trees all in code when they could have just put music notes and make it simple. This whole place operates like some kind of a game. So maybe that's why they were left there that way. And the man in yellow, while still shrouded in mystery, seems to be either the big bad here or working for the big bad. So of course he doesn't want Tabitha and Jade getting closer to the truth. He wants to keep the cycle of death and torment going. His eyes look demonic. He has claws that can rip open human flesh. Clearly he's no longer a human, if he ever was one in the first place. He could be the entity that tricked the original townsfolk of this place into sacrificing their children for immortality, or just working for that entity. Many fans have surmised that some of the inspiration for his character could be from the King in Yellow, the titular character of a play by Robert Chambers. The King in Yellow is a powerful and mysterious non-human being, bringer of madness and doom. The play also refers to a place called Carcosa, a mysterious, ancient, and possibly cursed city. So some fans have drawn parallels between Carcosa and Fromville. But getting back to the reincarnation revelation, it's a gigantic game changer for the show going forward. Tabitha and Jade remembering their true origins will have huge implications for their future and the future of the entire overarching story of this show. I would surmise that no iteration of Jade and Tabitha have ever gotten this far before, successfully deciphering the numbers from the bottles and unlocking their memories. Miranda knew many things thanks to her visions, but she didn't seem to know who she really was. She said to Henry that she was a chosen one and could see all the chosen ones before her, but she didn't refer to them as her past lives. She didn't know exactly what she needed to do, just that she needed to save the children. And she only tried to get to the faraway bottle tree because Victor informed her that the boy in white had told Christopher to go into it. Miranda also told Victor and Eloise to hide where Christopher couldn't find them. If she and Christopher had shared the same epiphany that Jade and Tabitha just had together, I doubt that Christopher would have become a threat to Miranda's children to the point where she told them to hide from him. Why would he want to harm the children of his original soulmate, if you will, a woman who he shared a daughter with in the original timeline? He wouldn't pose a threat like that to her children now. Not if he and Miranda had that epiphany together that Jade and Tabitha just had. So I don't think that they did. And it's possible that the boy in white told Christopher about his origins, and he couldn't handle the truth just being dumped on him secondhand like that, so he snapped, based on Victor's memories of him. I doubt he recovered his actual memory of his past life, or he wouldn't have reacted in the way that he did, angrily telling the boy in white that everything here lies. He clearly didn't have those memories to rely upon here. Now, there were already signs that the events in this current timeline have deviated from past cycles. For instance, Tabitha was pushed out of the lighthouse by the boy in white, whereas Miranda never made it out of Fromville as far as we know. Also, there are talismans in this cycle, while there were none when Victor was a child, if his memory can be trusted on that. We know he's not always reliable there. Far from it. I would venture to say that the characters here have made more progress than anyone ever has before, so the revelation of Tabitha and Jade, the knowledge of their origins, is what triggered the man in yellow showing up to create an obstacle for them. Their newfound knowledge came at the cost of Jim's life, and this will be a huge distraction for Tabitha going forward. Again, the man in yellow told Jim, "This didn't have to happen. I tried to warn you. Your wife shouldn't have dug that hole, Jim." So this brings the story full circle from the season 1 cliffhanger, and essentially, it's confirmation that the man in yellow was the source of the voice on the radio that told Jim, "Your wife shouldn't be digging that hole, Jim." That voice had a southern drawl, which the man in yellow does not, but I think the man in yellow can probably change his voice to whatever he wants it to be. Because I also think he was the source of the child's voice on the phone and the radio this season, claiming to be Thomas and gaslighting Jim and Ethan, playing mind games. To be fair, the man in yellow warned Jim about Tabitha too late. By the time he did that, Tabitha had already dug her way into the creature's cave, and Jim couldn't get to her in time to stop her. There's nothing he could have done, really, to prevent this. He was warned too late, and none of this was his fault, and yet he had to pay the ultimate price. What was such a problem about Tabitha digging that hole? Well, it kicked off her journey toward remembering her true origins. She was literally and figuratively digging her way toward the truth. It was in the cave where she saw the first Ankui kid. And after that, she continued to see them in increasing numbers, until she was driven to go to the lighthouse. This journey led her to Henry, who enlightened her about Miranda and her visions of the past chosen ones. Gaining this insight into her past lives, although she didn't know they were her past lives at the time, would eventually help Tabitha remember and understand who she really is. I believe this is the reason why the boy in white told her, "I'm sorry, this is the only way," before he pushed her out of the lighthouse. It was the only way for her to gain the insight that she needed to eventually remember and accept the truth about her origins. This season, the boy in white told Victor that he couldn't give him any information, that he thought they needed to learn for themselves, saying, "It's the only way you'll understand." You see, when the people say that the writers of this show don't know where they're going with this and are just making things up as they go along, just look back at all the points that I just made. All the ways that this storyline was set up from the beginning, from the start when Tabitha was digging that hole. It was all meant to lead right here. I think that the boy in white tried to give Christopher information, and apparently it didn't go well, as Christopher refused to do what the boy in white asked and called him a liar. So that's why I think the boy in white has been leading people toward the truth gradually, as he did with Tabitha. That's why he told Victor that they need to learn for themselves, and it's the only way they'll understand. I see the boy in white as the opposing figure to the man in yellow. The boy in white is a good entity that is trying to help stop the cycle once and for all, and help the children get saved, whatever that actually means, whether it's saving their souls or something more literal. He might be ambiguously good, sometimes doing Machiavellian things where the ends justify the means, but ultimately, I think he's trying to help Tabitha and Jade figure out who they are and how to save the children, breaking the cycle, and changing his tactics from the previous cycle, which apparently didn't work. We even have a figure in the opening credits who corresponds well as a foil to the man in yellow, the man in white, from one of Miranda's paintings. He looks depressed, as if he's resigned and has no choice but to play the role that he's playing right now. He has an actually depressed look on his face. Not evil, just resigned to what he needs to do. I think this is the boy in white's true form, and he just makes himself appear as a boy to gain the trust of people more easily. I'll dive deeper into the boy in white and man in yellow in future videos. But again, here's another example of how the breadcrumbs for all of this were laid from the very beginning. That painting of the man in white appears in the opening credits of the show. But anyway, the outcome for Jim is grossly unfair. He couldn't have stopped Tabitha from digging the hole in time when these events were set into motion. He also tried to warn Jade and Tabitha that it was suspicious the way Jade magically remembered the rest of the song after only deciphering a few numbers. But in the end, Jim's character growth ironically became his downfall. Instead of fighting Tabitha on this and staying behind, he decided to go against his better judgment and support his wife's mission, not invalidating her feelings, but in going along to the bottle tree so Jade could play the song. And he became collateral damage as a result. So what's next for the man in yellow and Fromville? What could this mean going forward? The man in yellow could pose a unique threat because he can come out in the daytime, unlike the monsters. It's possible that he could be the entity that young Tabitha saw in a dream as a child, when she looked up and screamed but couldn't remember what she saw. He may have appeared to her in that dream as a premonition. Based on what future Julie said to Jim, "You have to get to town," the man in yellow might not be able to enter the town, just the wooded areas here. So they might not have to deal with him wreaking havoc in town all the time. But speaking of future Julie, what is going on here exactly? We get insight into this situation when Julie and Ethan have a conversation earlier in the finale. Julie tells Ethan that she doesn't feel like she was dreaming when she was in the dungeon dream state, that she thinks she went somewhere, and tells Ethan everything she had seen. Without flinching, Ethan responds, matter-of-factly, "You're a story walker, someone who can visit chapters of a story that's already happened." Julie wonders if she can do it again and save Tian Chen or even Thomas, but Ethan says it doesn't work like that. He says, "You can visit the chapters, but you can't change them. No one can change a story that's already been told." Now fast forward to the ending, and we have what is clearly a future version of Julie traveling back in time to try to save her father. She tells Jim, "I need to change the story," but he doesn't listen, and she watches him die. So as Ethan had said, she isn't able to change the story here, and I don't think she will be able to do so when she most likely tries again. This seems to be Julie's first attempt, because she tells Jim, "I think this is when it happens." She doesn't know for sure. And since we see Jim die, this must be what was meant to happen, and she won't be able to change it again, in my opinion. That corresponds to the closed-loop model of time travel, something we've already seen in this show, in my opinion. When Julie apparently time traveled through astral projection and threw the rope to Boyd, she wasn't actually changing the story. It was always meant to happen that way. She didn't actually change anything about her present time by stepping into the ruins and being the one who threw the rope to Boyd, which had already happened. She fulfilled the purpose she was supposed to fulfill. She was always going to be the one who threw it to him. Boyd had to be saved so that he could go on to save Julie from the cicada coma by smashing the music box at the end of season 2. Boyd was supposed to make it out of that well so he could save Julie later. And paradoxically, if he hadn't done that, Julie wouldn't have been able to then go back in time and throw him the rope in the first place. So they saved each other in an endless loop with no clear start or finish, just a never-ending circle. That is what you call a bootstrap paradox. There's no clear start or end point to it. Things happened because they always happened that way. That's all. Since I would argue that we've already seen that closed-loop model of time travel, I doubt that the show will deviate from it and venture into grandfather paradoxes, doing things that actually make changes to the past that will affect things in the present. And we just saw Jim die, so that means it must be what was meant to happen, not something that can be changed, in my opinion. There was no version of events where we saw Boyd left in the well to die. He was always supposed to make it out. Another thing that I don't think can be changed is the original sacrifice of the children. If Julie goes back and stops it somehow, she could actually erase her own existence and the existence of all of Tabitha and Jade's incarnations and offspring over the years. Because they were reincarnated as a direct result of that sacrifice, this would be a grandfather paradox rather than a closed-loop paradox if people's existence is just wiped out. Now, it's possible that all of the various Tabithas and Jades could still be born, just with their own souls and not connected to the original Tabitha and Jade, but that wouldn't really be an accurate representation of reincarnation, as far as I can tell. So then what will be the point of Julie trying again with her efforts to save Jim and possibly others, as she tells Ethan she wants to do in the finale? I don't think she'll be able to save anyone who already died, like Tian Chen, Thomas, and Jim. However, while time traveling, aka story walking, Julie can gain vital insight to past events in Frumville and possibly be a huge asset to Tabitha and Jade in this way. She could even visit past cycles and give us a little glimpse into the Frumville of the past. It's also possible that we'll discover that Julie will be responsible for other things besides throwing the rope to Boyd. There might have been events we've already seen that time-traveling Julie influenced, not because she changed them exactly, but because she was always meant to play a part in these events. And some of them might actually be negative things. You never know. It would be wild, for example, if we find out that Julie made it out of Frumville on one of her story walks and was responsible for the phone call that distracted Jim and Tabitha, causing Thomas's death. We already got a hint that Julie might wind up being part of events that we've already seen when we saw her astral project herself, apparently, back in time to the cave, where she heard her mother and Victor at the time when they were there in Season 2, Episode 1. And this was when she went back into that dream state in Season 3. But getting back to the finale, we also had some significant developments with Randall and Marielle. Randall is triggered by loud cicada noise in his head again, so he can't even take it anymore, and he actually tries to unalive himself by putting a defibrillator to his head. Marielle stops him just in time and comforts him. She also finally admits to Christy that she's been putting on an act since the cicada coma, that she's actually not okay and doesn't think she ever will be, or any of them. This is setting up more problems for them in Season 4, as they continue to suffer the after effects of the cicada coma. It's possible that they could have story-walking abilities like Julie, but I doubt it. They all seem to have had different experiences and after effects, even though they were all in that dream state together. Randall has the invisible cicada attacks and invisible cicada noise. Julie hears screaming in her head. and we're not exactly sure what's going on with Marielle yet. She doesn't elaborate in the finale. I don't think this will end well for Randall, because he is so instinctively afraid to go back near the dungeon ruins, and said it just felt wrong. He refused to go back with Julie. I predict he may go back in the ruins eventually, and meet a grim fate as a result. Perhaps he could even become Martin, as some fans have theorized, since Martin seemed to recognize Julie, and it's possible that Boyd went forward in time instead of back in time when he met Martin in that dream state. Now, that was a lot to unpack in one jam-packed finale. The revelations uncovered in the finale regarding reincarnation and the origin story of the monsters, plus the arrival of the man in yellow and the introduction of Julie's time travel, will most definitely change everything from this point on. The showrunners did call Season 3 the end of the beginning, and it's clear now why they said that. Seasons 1 through 3 were a prelude to the wider story that is yet to come, as the world of this mystery box show is about to expand. And I want to know what you think. What did you think about the answers that we got in this episode regarding the origin of Jade and Tabitha and their connection to the Ankui kids? Where do you see their story going after this? Can Julie successfully save Jim? Is it possible to stop the original sacrifice of the children or change anything at all? Or is Ethan correct that she can't change the story? What will become of Randall and Marielle? Will they be able to do story walking like Julie or play some other role? Who or what is the man in yellow, and what role do you think he'll play in Season 4? Let me know all your thoughts and theories down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and until next time, keep on deep diving, and let's see what we can uncover together.